Welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and this podcast, it exists for you. Whether you're a music lover, an educator, a choir member, each week we bring guests to the show to help explore what matters in music. I'm so glad that you're here. Welcome to the show. Hello, and welcome to the Music Ed Matters podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Emily Williams Birch, and today we're talking to Dr. Damion Womack. Specifically, we talk about all things choral tone, choral programming, the importance of text, inclusion in the classroom, a lot of really quick and fun ideas that can help you develop a tone, pick really great music that resonates, and make sure that everyone in your space knows that they belong, they are safe, and they are included. I really liked how we titled this Singing in the Scope of the Ensemble, and you'll hear Dr. Womack talk about the scope of the rehearsal and how everyone creates their own individual sound. And it's our job as the directors, educators, teachers, conductors to take each individual unique sound and create the scope of the ensemble sound that we're looking for. And so I liked when Dr. Womack said, I just like my singers to sing, because isn't that why we're all doing this? And it's such a great reminder. He also said some really great things about how it's our job to not just perform music and make music that helps people smile, but it's to inspire our audiences and challenge and entertain and educate them, and the same for our students. And so in this conversation, you'll hear how Dr. Womack uses choral tone and programming and text and inclusion to achieve all of those goals. I hope that you know that this episode was brought to you by our friends at Kaleidoscope Adventures and the Kinnison Choral Company, and that's enough from me. Let's hear from Dr. Womack. Today on the Music Ed Matters podcast, we are talking to my friend, Dr. Damion Womack. Hello, Dr. Womack.
Hello. How are you?
I'm thrilled to be having this conversation with a fellow graduate of the University of South Carolina. We both got our doctorates there. Woo woo.
Yes, go Gamecocks.
It's so much fun. You know, I still hear, like, sometimes in my dreams that really loud screeching thing they play during the football games for those few times we had to go sing, and they play the Gamecock sound. Sometimes that sound haunts me in my dreams.
It's the best stadium. I try to get people to say, look, you need to go to a University of South Carolina football game. You know, they cut off the whole street, even like Assembly, they cut it off. It only goes one way, and that's to the stadium. And you can't have a bad seat. I mean, it's the best. I love it. I love my time there.
So much fun. Okay, tell the listeners, who is Dr. Damion Womack?
Who is Dr. Damion Womack? I am a husband, a father, a teacher, educator, conductor, a person who is very passionate about the art of choral music, a person who loves life, a person who can be the life of a party, or a person who can be at the side over in a corner eating dinner by himself, and is perfectly fine with that. A little bit about my professional career. Over the past 24 years, I have taught choral music at all levels, which include elementary, middle school, high school, university, and also church music. I began my career at Minor Junior High School in Birmingham, Alabama, teaching grades K through 9. I started their choral program there. From then, I accepted a position at the Montgomery Academy in Montgomery, Alabama, teaching grades 5 through 12. A few years after that, I became the director of arts and conducted the high school choirs. During those years, I spent 17 years there. Those were the years that the choral programs were seen on the ACDA regional and national stage. Had a great time during my experience there. From then, I accepted a position at Huntington College as director of choral activities and chair of the music department. And this past year, I was director of choral activities at Mississippi College in Clinton, Mississippi. Had an amazing time, wonderful students, wonderful faculty, an amazing choral program. And just recently this year, I was reappointed as Director of Arts and Upper School Choral Conductor at the Montgomery Academy, having a great time there. So that's a little bit about my journey and also what I'm doing now.
Yeah.
How did you get into choir, though? Like, before all of that, how did the choir bug bite you?
So I sang, I'm from Birmingham, Alabama, and I sang in a choir at Parker High School. It's a urban school right downtown in Birmingham. And, I know people say this about their high school choirs, and I'm going to say the same thing, but it's really true. We were one of the top choirs in the state and region. We were one of the first groups that participated in a Carnegie Hall festival when the people from Carnegie Hall actually came to your rehearsal. There wasn't sending in a videotape or sending in an audio tape. They came and sat in on our rehearsal. And we were the choir that when we went to state contests, people would stay to hear us sing. So cut to, we sang in New York. We would always tour for a week of spring break. And I don't know how he did this. He never took any chaperones. It was just my director and the accompanist and like 40 singers, but he did it. Yeah, I don't think it was legal back then, but I'm sure it wasn't, but he did it. And so anyway, we were singing at a cathedral in New York, and we were singing Ave Verum Corpus by William Byrd. And it got to the point of the midsection, the miserere, oh Lord, have mercy on our souls. And my choir director started to get emotional, and he started crying. Now I'm in the 9th grade, right? And he's put his tenors in the front, so I was right there in front of him. I sang tenor 1 when I was in the 9th grade, and I saw him getting emotional, and I'm thinking, dude, what are you doing? We're singing, get it together. Why are you crying? I'm 14, I don't know, right? And then I started to look around, and like the people on the side, sopranos on my left and the altos on my right, they started, getting emotional and crying too. And then all of a sudden, everyone just started holding hands. And that's how we finished the piece. And I was like, I don't know what process I got to go through, but I want to do what he's doing. And that just touched my life. And, it really made me just look at things differently. And that's at 9th grade, I knew I didn't have to go see a counselor to see, what majors are. I just knew from that point, that's what I want to do.
Wow, that's a really magical moment. Very vivid memory.
It was something.
Did you end up talking to your director after that and kind of like, hey, this is what I want to do? Or was this just an internal decision?
This is internal. Yeah. I never shared that experience with him. I never, went up to him and said, hey, how did this happen? It was just something I never forgot ever. And I tell the story. Yeah. But, it just touched me. I was like, whoa, this is something. Because at one point, even working on my DMA, I didn't know if I wanted to pursue vocal performance or choral conducting. And it's just something about being able to touch lives, not to say you can't do that. You can do that in vocal performance, but being there to be a conductor, to be a teacher, to be an educator, it just really pulled me. And so that's where that's my journey.
And when you went to college, did you pick your college because you knew you wanted to do that? How did it go from there? Like, what was your next step?
Yeah. So for me, college, to be in all transparency, it boiled around scholarship. Mm-hmm. It boiled around, who can I get a full scholarship from? But here's the caveat. So I went to undergraduate at Alabama A&M. It is a HBCU in Huntsville, Alabama. And so, sometimes you hear HBCUs, it's a smaller school. The level of instruction may not be what, like maybe what we experienced at South Carolina, which is a big, one of the well-known names, in South Carolina. But my professor, his name was Dr. Richard Tucker. He received his bachelor's and his master's from Westminster Choir College. Now, he was my director of choral activities, and he was my voice professor. So what better instructor am I going to where I received? And I saw him every day, multiple times a day. And he was my primary major instructor. So in essence, I was getting, he was an opera singer too, as well as a choral music educator. And so I was getting the best of any type of education that I could receive in choral music. So it was very fortunate for me.
And then did you start teaching right after then? Because you said you were still making the decision at your doctorate level, performance or conducting. So when did you start actually teaching?
Yeah. So I started teaching my first year, and I taught 1 year before going to graduate school at Alabama State University. And so I pretty much worked my way through teaching and going to grad school, mostly in the summers, but sometimes I would take a class in the fall, like a late class, like a 6 o'clock class, and then you can go back and forth. And I just never really stopped. Like the Carol Krieger, Dr. Krieger, who was at South Carolina when I came, she recruited me a little in that, they had, I don't know, you may have gone full time, but I did 3 summers in the fall.
They still have that option.
So, yeah.
I went full time because I need to be full time or I get distracted.
Yes. And so, yes, because you can get easily distracted. And so I went in the summers, and so I never stopped working until I had to take a sabbatical for a fall.
Okay.
And my school, they let me stay. They let me go, and even my church job said, okay, you can go and have a sabbatical. So that was how I completed my doctorate. Even though during that time, we had our son during that time, so I took time off for that. And then he had, some serious health issues. We took time off for that. But yeah, so that's how. So I never really stopped, even though I was recruited by other schools to pursue a DMA, but I just didn't want to stop. And it was good because my high school choir performed at ACDA Southern during that time while I was still working on my doctorate. So I may not have got an opportunity, to do that.
Okay, I have 2 questions. First question, for someone listening that is thinking, I might be ready to pursue my doctorate, but I'm loving my job, I love teaching. What are some tips or what are some things that really clicked in your head that was like, yes, now is the time to pursue additional education? What are some pieces of advice you give listeners on that regard?
Yeah, so, for me, and it probably was for you too, you start, people either notice you or hear your groups or things like that and say, hey, have you thought about, pursuing a DMA or a PhD? They may see your level. They may see that, hey, he may, this person may want to do something different or, go another route. And then people approach you. I'll also see with me, to be honest, I just wanted to know at that time when I started my doctorate, I wanted to know more about choral music. Because here's the thing.
That's me right there. Yeah. I was like, there's more to learn.
Yeah. Before that, I was going to every year. I was going to summer workshops, like, the conducting symposiums. I was going to, a lot of things during the summer. I was going to all the ACDA, which we still do. But I was getting like little knickknacks. I wasn't getting like the full package. I was getting like little, things that may work, but I wasn't getting the full, history, the theory, the conducting of an instrumental ensemble, which out of all of, I love working with the choral ensemble. Obviously that's what we do, but to work with the live ensemble 3 days a week, doctoral master students, it just puts you on another level. And so for me, it was like wanting to know more about the art, because when you know more, your students are able to know more. The more you know, that commercial is true. The more you know, then the more your students can know and can learn from you. And so that was the primary reason for me pursuing a DMA.
I feel the same way. And man, that orchestral class that we get to take multiple times, I think we took 2 or 3 orchestral conducting classes. I feel like that changed my choral conducting in such positive ways. Yep. Okay, my other question. So that really beautiful ethereal moment back with Bird in 9th grade on stage, emotions, hand holding. Have you had those experiences on the flip side now?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. I mean, I don't want to say I get those all the time. If I could probably mention one that I will, and I always come back to it, and the students always come back to it. We were, so in 2013, my son was diagnosed with neuroblastoma. It is a tumor. It's a form of cancer. And so we were going through a lot, obviously, with him, with chemo treatments and things like that, of that nature, obviously to get the tumor out of him. Well, the summer of 2013, I received notification that my high school choral group had been invited to sing at ACDA Southern in Jacksonville. It's the one that Dr. Fenton was over. And so, I had an opportunity to perform at ACDA. My son is currently going through serious health issues, right? And I said, well, this may not be the time for me to accept this. But I thought about the students, when, some people go through the whole career to just be able to sing on the stage like that. And my wife and I, we have faith. And we said, we're not going to hold anything back. We're not going to set anything aside. We have faith. We're going to move forward. Well, so when you're picking literature, in the state I was in, people will say, which is always funny, when you talk to people about literature for ACA and national events, okay, well, choose this type of piece, choose a new piece because no one knows it and they can't, talk to you about it or, delete you on it or things like that. Choose a 18th or 19th century pieces, all these things of, when you perform there. But my brain wasn't thinking that way. I was thinking about the journey I'm going through with my son. So we sang a song. It's called Psalm of Hope. It's by Andrea Ramsey. And it just goes through what Andrea did. She took 3 Psalms and she wove them, the text, and wove them into one. But, it had the text of the Lord is my shepherd. Who shall I fear? In you, I put my trust. And I should never be afraid. That's what I was going through, with my son, with my family. And when we sang that piece, and I listened to him from time to time, when we sang that piece on that stage, I was like, oh my gosh, because there are 1,200 of your peers in the audience. But at that point, it wasn't about them. I didn't even realize that they were there. It was about myself. And I can see those students looking at me because they were in that journey with me. And that's what got me through my son. My son is, he's obviously healed 100%, but it was the music. But on that stage at that point, I felt that. And I felt that we were all together as one. And that was really meaningful.
That's a beautiful story. And I love that you got the full circle moment. And it's the perfect time to kind of talk about your choral philosophy. So let's talk about choral tone. What are some of your thoughts and techniques and tips in that regard?
Well, I like to work a lot in doing the warm-up process. And rehearsal, for me, the rehearsal is the best part of the day. It's when you get to talk about the pieces, you get to learn about the pieces, you get to explore, you have the opportunity to learn about the composer's intent, but then you as the conductor, you can add your own intent to it as well. So what I like to talk about a lot in the rehearsals, I like for my singers to sing free. I like for them to sing natural, and I like for them to have their own resonance. And what I call in my rehearsal, the scope of the ensemble, I like for every person to create their own sound by using, and I'll talk a little bit more about this vowel modification, but they keep it within the scope of the ensemble. And I do use a lot vowel modification in my classroom. One thing that I don't do is, and I'll tell you about this, I don't use the word blend because some people are not, especially young students, they're not able to use that word in connotation. Like, what are we talking about? Clothes? Or are we talking about, what are we talking about when you use the word blend? I talk about unification and I talk about agreeing. A lot of times when you ask singers to blend, they may think that you're asking them to sing softer or sing just like the person that's next to them. But many times when you ask a singer to blend and to sing like the person next to them, what they're trying to do is match someone else's voice. What I want my singers to do is use their own voice, but let's use unification and vowel modification as ways to have a homogeneous sound. If you ask someone to match another person's voice, then they are probably not going to sing naturally. And that's what you want. You want them to be able to sing to create the best sound that they can. And also, I don't ask singers to use the exact same mouth set because they're able to create it using different ways. And I want to read something to you by it's a quote by Robert Shaw.
Yeah.
He said, the ability of many to sound as one is a dynamic power of any ensemble. One must be cautious when using the word blend, even though unification is often a goal of the ensemble. So that's what we're going for, is unification of the sound. But how do we get there? So when you think about unification of choral sound, you think about what? Tone, intonation, diction, pitch, and vowels. And in working with that, if you agree that you're going to pronounce a word, articulate a word in a certain way. When I talk about dynamics, I use 1 to 10, 1 being the softest, 10 being the loudest, but you never want to be at a 10. Well, sopranos, today we all have to be at a 5. That's going to help with unification of a sound. If one soprano is at an 8 and one is at a 4, then the one that's at an 8 is being obtruse. And so, she, we say what? Sticking out. That's that voice sticking out. That's not that's not unifying. And so when you think about dynamics, you all want to be at the exact same. And people also use the word ensemble sound. What is the ensemble sound? In warm-ups, I use a lot of oo, e, and e. Those are great vowels to lift the soft palate and to unify. And what I also have students do is just to move quickly through those vowels, doing warm-ups like nu, e, or, e. And if you use your vowel modification to go quickly through those, then it's going to translate to the text. Because for me, when I ask students, I always think the most challenging text for Americans to sing is the English language, right? Because we all have our own dialect, and we should, because we're all different. But when you step on those risers, guess what? It has to be one. It has to be one sound. And so for me, using a lot of unification of vowels, using a lot of warm-ups with those vowels, it really helps. And I like my singers to sing. When I'm working with collegiate singers, I know they do have a lot of vibrato. I want to hear it, and then I will say, well, let's modify that tone, or let's unify that vowel a little bit more. But that's just, and everyone is different when it comes to the sound that they like. But I do like singers to sing, and I think it's up to the conductor to then put it within the scope, what I call the scope of the ensemble sound.
I love it. Singing in the scope of the ensemble sound. I think I'm going to title the episode that, Singing in the Scope. Something always comes to us in the middle of the recording. I'm like, oh, that's the title. I love this idea of scope. So I want to make sure I have all the points. You get them within that scope through your warm-ups, through teaching them about intonation, diction, pitch, vowels, dynamics, and then you just get them to sing and adapt. So they're still singing themselves.
Yes, they are.
All right. So what do you do with that soprano who's singing an 8?
And should not be singing an 8, or should? Yeah.
Well, shouldn't be.
Shouldn't be. Well, the obvious, right, is to tell them. The one thing I don't like to really do, you can do it with collegiate singers. I think they're older. Is to, if you have high school singers, is to point them out. Okay, to say, hey, I need you to sing softer. I need you to sing louder. I don't really like to point people out. So I will say, okay, sopranos, we're not at an 8. We're not at a 5. We're at an 8. So I need for us to agree. I use the word agree a lot. I need for each one of us to agree that we're going to be on a 5 or on a 6. Or I need for us to agree that we're going to pronounce this oo vowel thinking forward, or the E vowel, which we know E's can go all the way, right? I need for us to agree that we're going to think of the E vowel forward, right on the tip of the tongue. And so the words that I use, agree, unify, you can say that to a 5th grader. You can say, I need you to be a 4. Now, here's the thing about the volume. They create what a 4, 5, or 6 is. I don't tell them this is what a 4 sounds like. This is what they created. Then I may come and say, okay, I think it's more like a 5 or 6, but they are initiating that sound to you. Then it's up to us as the educator to say, okay, let's modify that a little bit more.
I love it. Okay, these are great tangible tools. How do you then transfer that to your repertoire? Give us some examples there. So you've done this moving through oo, e, and eh. Then what?
Yeah, so we moved to the text. And if we're talking about sound, we move to the text, we move to the music, but the same elements apply when we start singing. Usually, I begin to sing on a neutral vowel. Okay, so you've warmed up on neutral vowels. If I'm introducing a piece, I'm going to stay with a neutral vowel. Pretty much, what I would do is I look through the text and I see what vowels are predominant. Is it u? Is it e? Is it e? And we will just modify and go through with the different connotations of the piece, using those vowels with the same elements that we've used in the warm up. And then
That's fun. Okay, so what's been your favorite piece that you've worked on so far this semester?
When I did this semester that I hadn't I've done in a while. I've done before, but I hadn't done in a while. It's The Awakening by Joseph Martin. Now, and the deal is, I did not know the story. And we're going to get to that later. The text to me, and just not only the text, but the history of the pieces that you sing, knowing the story behind it, it is probably one of the most invigorating things. But see, that came from in 2014 when we sang Psalm of Hope. And that's when my whole life of knowing what the piece really talks about, it changed. But Joseph Martin, he was going to a rural high school, and I don't know the city or the state, and he enjoyed choir, obviously. He's a nationally known composer and choral clinician. They came to school one day, and they found that his high school choir director was murdered in her classroom. No. They came into school and they saw tape. And this is nothing. I mean, it is an essay that he wrote. I was reading it. It was there was tape around the room, and they couldn't go in the room. And so he said at that point, he lost his love of music. So the awakening, the awakening is very dreamy. It starts in that minor, it's very dreamy. He said he had to go through that process. And so when you hear the awakening start, I dream a dream, and you hear that no loud hosannas, no one was singing. But then at the end, you hear, oh, awake my soul and sing. That's him coming to life again. Wow. And so I never knew that story. I've sung that piece. I just thought, like many, it's about the awakening of music, and it is. But that's his story, that he was at a point of his life where he did not want to be involved in music at all. But now you see where he is. But that piece really, really hit me a little bit.
Well, let's go into this whole choral programming thing, because you've hinted at it a couple of times with lyrics and knowing the story and how you program, about the journey that you're on and how you've seen these programs play out. Let's talk about your thoughts on choral programming.
Yeah, so when you look at an audience, right? People come from all different areas of life, and they come with baggage. And they come feeling good. They come feeling bad. They come to be uplifted. People come to be brought hope and change and joy. So, I try to do a diverse repertoire that can stimulate the students musically, and also to be expressive for the students. But, when you think of music, the first thing is the text. What's the message? How can my students benefit from this piece of music? The composer, when composers write, they're usually doing three things. They want to entertain. They're writing a piece to entertain you, to persuade you, or to inform you. So it's our job as the choral conductor, what is the composer's intent? One of those three. And what I say is also the benefit to the audience. Is this a show? Are we just putting on a production? The audience has to be fed. The audience, should come away feeling inspired, feeling challenged, feeling overjoyed. And so all that comes into play when you're thinking about text. When you go to history class, you have a history book. When you go to math class, you have a math book. The octavo, or that major work, that's our text. And it's our responsibility is our responsibility to get that music off of the page, so that people can be inspired, especially in 2022, where the world is so divided. There's social issues, religious issues, politic issues. Music is a way of bringing healing. There are people who are going through deaths, and all of that sort. And so I think that as composers, as conductors, it's our job to look at the text. How can the audience be benefited? When you think of programming, you think of poets, women in music. Sarah Tisdale, her life was so challenging. And if you notice that she's one of the top poets that composers write, because she had a very challenging life. Classical music of African Americans. When we think of African American composers, and rightly so, we think of spirituals, we think of gospel music, and we should. But there are many more pieces of classical content that we should know. I mentioned women composers, and not only early women composers, but women composers. I'm a very and Kevin Fenton, he is like this too. I am an advocate of new music, and I've just always been that way. And I don't know, but I'm an advocate of new music, and so programming an evening of new composers. Mm-hmm. One reason is I like for my students to be able to talk to composers. Now we want to have a variety. We do understand that, but to be able to put a podcast on or Zoom, hey, let's go meet this composer. Let's bring this composer in our class. And we talk about composers. Students, they think, you can have a composer 65, 70 years old. That's young in composer land. So, and that's still a modern composer. And so I am just a advocate of programming music that students can relate to. And also, when we have bring out a piece of music, that music travels with us for a journey. It stays with us for a season. We sometimes we'll perform in the fall and then pick it up in the spring, or it'll stay with some pieces I do year round. How can this help the choir's journey? What is this doing for your students that come in here and sing this music every day? How can the text help our students in everyday life? And I'm talking about from 5th grade all the way up into, I have in my adult choir, there are people 85 years old. If you're picking music, how can that help them in their everyday life? With everything going on, with even in collegiate choirs, bullying and social norms and people just trying to figure out their lives. How can you select music that you can teach? Instead of, are we in this just to be, transparent and put it on the table? Are we in choral music to get superior ratings? Are you, are we just doing this to get a first place? Okay. I'll even say ACDA. Are we challenging our students just to get selected to sing at a regional or national conference? That's not the reason. It's part of the process, right? And I've been the tail that wagged the dog. I've done high school competitions, gotten first place, came back, showed that trophy, right? We've all done it, but is that the real reason? Mm-hmm. We're here to educate, to inspire, and to inform our audiences. And so we select the music. That's the one thing, for the most part, that we have total autonomy. And so, I want to sing this piece. It has a nice harmony. It has a nice harmony. It sounds good. Okay. And it may be because I could sing lush harmonies all day, but because that's what I love. But at this point in my life, I need some meat. I need for the text to be as such, someone can be moved. Someone can come to the concert not feeling well, had a bad day, lost a neighbor, or just not feeling well, and be uplifted, like, wow. Because I had that happen. We were on tour at Mississippi College, and we were singing a piece, and I had someone after the concert come up to me in tears. And she didn't tell me her situation, but she just said, "Thank you so much." And some of the students were around this person when she came up, and I told her, look, that's the reason. Mm-hmm. That's the reason that we do this. And so I know text to me is just, especially with the situation I've been through, it just totally changes. And even if we do, like when we're doing honor choirs in all states, okay, you select that music, the teachers teach it, you're looking at probably 100 to 200 students that you can affect by music that you select and you teach. And so it just means that much more.
So I love that we got on this bandwagon. So do you start by looking at the text first, or do you start by you had mentioned a couple different routes. You mentioned relating to composers. So do you start by looking in different composer lists, or do you look for certain poets or texts? Like, where do you start?
So this is what I start doing it. And I wish I would have can say that I've coined this myself, but as choral musicians, we always steal stuff, right? And so, and I'm an advocate. If I find that someone does something well, I'll steal it. Let's say we're doing a piece. Okay. Oh, Love, Elaine Hangenberg. Mm-hmm. We know, oh my gosh. Right. Mm-hmm. So what I started doing, and this was just recently, I say a few years ago, I would have the students get the poem. And sometimes I would have it to where, not in the music, but how the composers will put it in poet form on the side. Mm-hmm. Let's look through that. And I would have them research the composer and the author. First, I would let them start with the author of the text. Now you're thinking, well, you're doing this in a choral rehearsal room. It's not, I don't do it every time, but once you get in a rhythm, it only takes a couple of minutes. I would have them pull out their phone. And I would have them research. So for this Oh Love is George Matheson, right? And then I would have them look up the composer. The composer of the text, and I would have them know, like, when did he write it? What was the purpose of him writing the text? Okay, I would have them. Okay, do you have any relationship with the text? Like, I would have them speak. Like, well, this text is about this. So George Matheson on the text Oh Love. He was madly in love with a woman, and they were dating, courting. They were going to get married. He started going blind step by step. It didn't all come at once. And so he went up to his wife, to his future wife, right before he was about to go fully blind, and said, "Hey, I'm about to be blind. Will you take care of me when this happened?" And she said, "No, I'm out of here." She said, "My father did not raise me to have to take care of someone." And she left. And he ended up writing this, and it didn't take him long to write this hymn later when his sister got married. So when he talks about, oh, love, thou would not let me go, he's not talking about like a person. That's what I thought. It's like another person loves another person. He's talking about God. He's like, God will never leave me. He'll never forsake me. But because the lady did, she left. And so when you hear the old love that will not let me go, okay, so I would have the students, talk about that. Because if you can talk about it, then when you get ready to sing it, you can really internalize the music when you know the text.
Mm-hmm. And then you get to the audience, which is all part of everything that you're saying. It's that whole, are we entertaining? Are we persuading? Are we informing? That's such a great way to look at this, but also relating.
Yes.
So what are you most excited that the students have really, like, what piece of music have you selected this semester that really has resonated with the students in front of you?
I think The Awakening, as I mentioned, is one. Another piece that I've done in the past, that really, man, and it's a piece called Ukrainian Alleluia by Craig Courtney. And we did that last spring, but it was just when, all of the efforts that's been going on in Russia in the war. He wrote that piece back, I think it was 30, 40 years ago, when the Ukrainians were having issues then. And they've always been underprivileged. They've always had to fight. And so that was a piece that I really felt that the students could hone in on, because it never like an Alleluia. So let's say Elaine Hangenberg, her Alleluia is a joyful. She wrote it during COVID. So it was a joyful Alleluia saying that we will get through this. But the Alleluia by Ukrainian Alleluia by Craig Courtney, it never goes to a happy side. It's just always, he keeps it always, we're just grinding. We're just, we're trying to get through. We're trying to move forward. And I think that the students really gravitated towards that. There's another piece called Pilgrim Hymn that I'm doing this fall by, it's by Ryan Murphy. And I think it was written for the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. Well, I did it with my high school students, and I talked to them about it that, guys, when you get older, people start to talk differently about life. And the Pilgrim's Hymns talks about a journey, going through a journey, going through how to live your, as teenagers say, your best life in this journey, right? I have a church choir member who's 85 plus. He is one of the best bassists I've worked with. And he came up to me a while ago and said, Damion, I think I'm on my last end here singing. And I was like, yes. And I said, no, you are such, you're doing a fantastic job. There's no way. But that's what that Pilgrim's Hymns, it talks about, contemplating your life and on your life's journey and how you want to live forever. And I told the students about that. But that really resonated with them. And we sang it, and I can see it in their eyes and in their expressions, how, they're getting the text across to the audience.
It's such a great segue, too, into the third topic we wanted to talk about today, which was inclusion in the classroom. Because it's so cool. It's like when I ask you your favorite piece that you're working on choral tone and every programming and everything, you go to the piece that the students are resonating with most. And so I would love to know your thoughts on inclusion in the classroom.
Yeah, so, I really think, especially now that I like to keep my classroom to where everyone feels safe and in a safe environment. I want to create a safe space to where no matter if they're, ethnic, racial, cultural, religious, or gender differences can be accepted. Because if you're not, then, how is a person in a classroom going to feel safe? How are they going to feel like they're wanted? And as a person who's been racially profiled, I know how that feels. And I just want to create a safe space for every student, no matter everything that I just mentioned. I was adjudicating their state MPA. It's been a few years ago. And there was a men's choir that came in that I was going to clinic. And I saw a person who was a male that I'm pretty sure, even though, a lot of this is new for me, that was transitioning to a female. And when they came in, I said, okay, boys, come on in. And when I saw that, I just totally freaked out, like, wow, I hope I didn't disrespect this person. And I don't think I did, but I couldn't tell you what happened the next 15 minutes of the clinic, because I was just so upset that I may have said something to maybe offend that person. So from that point, I just changed my whole outlook. Even if I'm working with an honor choir or my choir, I used to work soprano, alto. And some places are doing this now. They're calling, treble choirs, or I'll say tenors and basses. I never refer to that because I just want everyone to feel safe. Because here's the one thing. There are students at certain schools that don't have to take music. Now, they may have to take a fine art, okay? But at a lot of K-12 schools, you have one music teacher, one choral director, one band director. And if that student has a bad outcome with that director, then they're gone. It's not like math. You can take math in 9th grade, get a new teacher, take another math in 10th grade, but a lot of times we're the only person. Even in collegiate settings, we're the director of choral activities, and that's it. So I try to do everything I can to create a safe space, because these students, these kids, they're growing up it's different. It's a different society. And they're just trying to find out who they are. And I don't want to be the person that stands in front of that. And that's not my job. I just want them to be able to say, oh, I feel safe here. Or even if they want to confide and say something in the group or in that area, that they feel like they can do that and not feel threatened. Because as we know, that's legitimate to feel threatened, to have a certain, to be a certain way and to feel threatened. And so that's just my outlook on it. Is I want everyone to just be themselves, and I want them to feel like, wow, I can come in here and do that. And so that's pretty my outlook on inclusion.
I love that you turn the focus to how it's our responsibility as a team of educators to make sure that the student feels like they belong and they are safe, so they can continue down the path of exploring the power and the impact of music and having all these examples of great text and developing their sound within the scope of the ensemble and all of those things is part of the experience, being a part of something bigger than yourself. Oh, this is so fun. Okay, we've talked about choral tone. We talked about choral programming. We talked about inclusion in the classroom. Did we cover all the pieces today?
I think so.
All right. So the final question. What is the one thing that really matters? The one thing you want to leave the listener with?
And I've already mentioned it. I guess I gave it away too soon, but I'm going to talk. I'll mention it again. If you go back and say, what is our job as a choral music educator? Our audience should come away from performances feeling overjoyed, feeling challenged, feeling inspired, feeling healed. Music is not always made for everyone to smile. Sometimes music makes us hurt through experiences, but it is a form of healing in a lot of places. And so I just, I would like for choral music educators to really focus on the type of music that they're choosing, because it is going to have an outcome with your audience. And that's what we're here to do. We're here to inspire people. We're here to challenge. And when I say challenge, if we're singing a piece that people may not be as invigorated, if it's a social justice piece that talks about certain things. Also, our audience should be educated. Maybe we're singing a piece by Bach, a motet by William Byrd. That's a piece that they maybe not have heard. So in essence, we're educating them. But I think that, we should definitely look at the types of pieces and music that we're selecting for our audience, because it matters, and music matters. Music changed lives. That's not a hashtag. Music changes lives, and I think if and I believe that we do, but I'm just we should all look at it in that respect, as this is our mission, this is our goal, to do that.
I love it. Never forget that music changes lives.
Yes.
Thank you so much for giving time and coming on the podcast.
Yeah.
All right, my friends, I would love to know, what are you programming that's inspiring or challenging or educating or entertaining? What are you excited about right now? It's super easy to connect. Jump over to patreon.com/musicedmatters and join the Patreon community. Every single cent over there helps to keep the podcast alive through all of the different fees associated with streaming and hosting and all of that jazz. Plus, there's a lot of fun stuff like your bonus episode every month and drop-ins and conversations and inspirational things. And it's just really fun. Plus, it's a direct line. And it's a great place to talk about things like repertoire and tone and inclusion and have that community of like-minded people. Patreon.com/musicedmatters. You can also reach me at emilybirch.org/contact. I always love when I get new messages that pop in from the contact page, when you let me know what you love about the podcast, people you want me to interview, all sorts of things. I read all of them, and it brings so much joy. So you bring me joy. Thank you so much for existing. And in case no one has told you today, you matter. We all know that music matters. especially how we create the scope of the sound and keep every singer as part of the group and knowing they're included, and programming excellent, fun music that is entertaining and challenging and educational and informative and all the things. And I'll see you next time on the Music Ed Matters podcast.